Sean Strickland versus Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Let's just get right into it. This is a fantastic main event. The whole card is, a little shaky. I feel like the UFC is a little starving for talent lately. Dana White himself even says he doesn't matchmake anymore. He doesn't really have any stake in the company besides actual stake in the company, but I feel like it shows, and so this is the type of main event that really brings us back to some good times, some good fights. So Sean Strickland, man, this guy's fought the absolute best of them, and Anthony Hernandez is headed that way. He wants that. I think there's an extreme difference in athleticism between the two guys. Strickland, to me, is the better athlete, but Fluffy, you can argue he's just a more tenacious fighter. He is going to aggressively search for those takedowns no matter what. I do think that both guys are somewhat one-dimensional. Sean Strickland has made a career of stopping takedowns and beating guys up. The only time we've ever seen him ragdolled was against Usman, and we know Usman is an all-time great. But Fluffy could definitely have luck if he just really goes for the takedowns, doesn't give Strickland any of those first minutes, because Strickland is really strong in the beginning of fights. When he's landing the jab to the body, kicks up top. Hernandez was honestly looking pretty bad even against Brendan Allen on the feet until Brendan, with his negative fight IQ, took his back and just gave Anthony every opportunity to grapple. Strickland won't give Fluffy those opportunities to grapple. Now, this is a tough matchup. I think that Strickland has regressed a bit. He's taken some time off. I don't know how those DDP losses have really affected him. DDP's only route to really beating him was in the wrestling. DDP wanted to make it a point in the second fight to stand with Strickland and beat him up. But DDP is a fantastic fighter and levels above everyone in that division. Maybe he's only a couple levels above Strickland, but he really was a fantastic champion until Chimaev came around. And I've heard people even saying Fluffy will give Chimaev a run for his money. Absolutely not. Chimaev would sleep Hernandez in the first round, whether it be to the body, whatever. That's a story for a different day. But Fluffy's made a lot of improvements. But it can't escape me that this guy got dropped to the body by Kevin Holland in under a minute, and he still hasn't really worked on his athleticism in a way where I'm like, wow, Hernandez has made so many strides with his athleticism, with his durability. The guy still gets hit hard. He just wears guys out, but Strickland doesn't get worn out. That's the thing. I keep struggling because I'm like, well, where does Hernandez win this fight? Is it with the takedown? Sure, I think even with Strickland's fantastic takedown defense, Fluffy is just so, again, tenacious and will really go for the takedowns until he lands them. And we've seen Strickland controlled before, but Strickland is an underrated scrambler. Reversals were a thing for Brandon Allen even in their second fight. I mean, we saw Hernandez on his back for most of the round and early in that fight. All that Hernandez can really do is try to wear Strickland out, but that's going to be tough as Strickland's just a better striker out the gate. Hernandez's takedowns are not going to be as open as they are with other guys, and I don't know. It's hard to refute the momentum of Fluffy right now and the way he's just absolutely dominated middle of the pack guys. But if Strickland comes in without much rust, it's a tough fight for Fluffy. It's probably the hardest fight in the division for Fluffy. I would personally take Fluffy against even Adesanya, Pfeiffer. Those are probably easy matchups. But Strickland has a distinctive style, that is just so tough for Fluffy. That's what makes this fight so intriguing. Neither of these guys are afraid to go into the fire. I know people are going to hate this pick off the bat, but I have to take Sean Strickland. It is just so hard for me to take the less skilled guy. And I know people will call me a hater for that. I just think that Fluffy is an extremely good fighter. But that doesn't mean that he's an extremely skilled fighter. He can always get the fight to the ground. I think his grappling is solid. And Hernandez will admit this himself. He's just a workhorse more than anything else. Whereas Strickland does have a lot of good tools. I think if you ask me who's the better striker, if I ask you who's the better striker, I think it's a given. And then you say, well, who's the better wrestler? Who's the better grappler? You're going to say Hernandez, but to what extent? Strickland is a very good defensive wall. When he's stopping takedowns, he's also hitting you. In the scramble, he's tough. He's good at getting back to his feet. Hernandez, although scrappy and great at getting takedowns, he's not the best at holding guys down. We've seen him reversed in bad positions himself. I think Strickland beats him up early and often. I mean, I don't know if this will be a one-way matchup either way, because Fluffy is just always a dog in there, and so is Strickland. So if either guy is getting the better of them, they're still going to be in the fight. I don't see any quit in either guy. If anyone gets stopped by strikes, it'll be Fluffy, because I can see Strickland taking a beating and not quitting. He's fought the best of the best. You know, he's hung in there for a hard 5 with DDP, who's just an extreme athlete in there. So again, I'm going to take Strickland. It's just too many intangibles that make me question myself. You know, I want to go with the momentum of Fluffy, but I'll always take the more skilled fighter, and I do think that is Strickland. That's it. Okay, co-main event, Dan Ige versus Melquizael Costa. I always mess that name up. Sorry, Melk Costa, we'll just call him that, the Dalmatian. Man, this guy is making strides. He's a southpaw. I mean, the metrics really just favor him completely and wholly. You know what I mean? Dan Ige is only getting older. He's a 34-year-old man, but he's a rough 34 in terms of fight years. You know, he's taken his fair share of beatings in there, and he's also never really risen to the occasion. I mean, I even remember the Barboza fight. I don't think he won that fight. You know, people will argue all day. I think he's going to struggle with the striking of Costa, which is newly discovered now. I mean, knocking out Morgan Charrier, that's nice, you know, because if Melk had just grappled him, submitted him, okay, that's kind of expected. But Morgan is a solid striker. You know, I thought Morgan got robbed against Chepe, who is a formidable grappler himself. Costa is just making improvements. He's evolving, whereas Ige, kind of stagnant, a bit of a gatekeeper. Do I question this co-main event spot? Absolutely. I would have rather seen like a heavyweight bout in this spot. Someone maybe... I don't know. But again, this card is very unique because it has a lot of interesting matchups with guys who maybe don't have name value yet. And Dan Ige is probably like one of the higher ranked guys on this, but I'm rocking with Melk all day here. I think the striking is going to get to Ige. I think he can hurt him on the feet. I'm going to take Costa by sub, honestly. I feel like we've seen enough of Ige just... You know, he'll pull the trigger early, but late in fights, his gas tank kind of costs him. Even against Leroy Murphy, he could have gotten that knockout, but he just makes some low IQ plays and then just ends up gassing himself out. So I like where Costa's at. He's the younger man, but he is approaching 30, so neither of these guys is truly young in the fight game or in life, but I think Costa's made enough improvements to really make Ige some easy work here. Serghei Spivac versus Ante Delija. You know, Spivac is still kind of that guy who got knocked out by Walt Harris when he came into the UFC, you know. When I was watching tape on Spivac all those years ago, I was like, this guy really has no striking defense, and guess what? He still doesn't. Powerful judo fighter. He can ground anybody, I think, at least for a bit, but his control kind of sucks. I mean, the Almeida fight was just ridiculous. He actually looked great in that fight, and then just a bunch of low IQ moves. He really has this urge to never be boring, you know, and always finish the fight. It's like, hold on, man. You don't always have to just feel like you got to finish the fight. You got to win some fights, and it's cost him greatly. So people are kind of torn on this one. I do think I actually don't know who the underdog is, but I could see either guy being the dog just for various reasons. Spivac being the much more potent grappler, and Delija just being, a serious knockout threat, and also being a potent grappler himself. So I really like Delija in this matchup. I think he's going to catch Spivac early. I don't trust Spivac's chin, and nothing's changed that. Delija is the older guy here, but at heavyweight that doesn't mean much. He's hardened. He also hurt Waldo worse than we've ever seen Waldo hurt. I am going to rock with Ante Delija here. I think he's going to land the hard shots early, and I think Spivac's not going to be able to really take those shots. So I like him in this one, and that's really it. I'm usually not about taking PFL guys, but Delija's been around. He's formidable, solid fighter here. Higher striking quality, higher striking accuracy. If you notice here, Spivac actually has higher significant strike accuracy, but that's mostly on the ground. You know, I favor Delija here to catch him early. All right, and then we move on to Jacobe Smith versus Seok Ko. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. Ko's come in as a dog for me quite a few times. I like this guy's style. Sambo world champion. Don't sleep on that. This is just one of those matchups where I feel like it's going to stay on the feet because both guys are so formidable on the ground. Jacobe Smith, you can argue he's got some of the best wrestling credentials in the UFC, if not the best, but I don't want to go through that because I it's going to come down to fractional elements here. But Ko is a solid test, and Jacobe's probably not even going to try to take this guy down. Why would he? They're both southpaws, which is going to make this fight interesting, hopefully not boring. They might go to war here. I really just see Jacobe boxing him up because Ko on the feet is a wild man. He's way too wild for me. Jacobe has an inch of reach, but I feel like he'll make good use of that. A lot of significant strikes landed per minute for Jacobe, and there's a big striking differential there. Whereas Ko is really comfortable on the ground, Jacobe's even more comfortable, and he's also comfortable on the feet. So I feel like Jacobe is just going to beat him up and then maybe incorporate some grappling there. But this is a tale of two grapplers, and I think it's going to stay on the feet. So I'll take Jacobe there. The metrics favor him. In my head, I just favor him from watching the tape, and it's where we'll go. Zach Reese versus Michel Pereira. I cannot believe Michel Pereira is still a favorite to anybody in 2026. You can argue that Reese, maybe not the highest quality fighter, definitely not, but he is athletic enough, explosive enough. He's the much bigger man here, 3 inches of height, 4 inches of reach. I'm surprised the odds makers actually put Pereira as the favorite in this one, because usually they can kind of catch on to a guy's decline. I don't think they've caught on to Pereira's decline yet. You can argue that Pereira is the more skilled man everywhere, but at this phase of his career, the damage he's taken, I feel like Fluffy truly ruined him. So I'm definitely taking Reese here. It's not even a question, especially at dog odds. I like that a lot. I think this is going to be one of the more chalky dog plays that people probably hammer closer to. But yeah, Zach Reese is probably going to smoke Pereira. Pereira's chin is somewhat dust now. Doesn't really have a gas tank either. And Reese, I wouldn't say he's got the best gas tank, but hell, it's better than Pereira's at this point in time. So you're giving me dog odds because oddly enough, I'm not a huge fan of Zach Reese. Again, I usually don't take the more skilled. Sorry about that. I usually don't take the more skilled. When it comes to Reese and Pereira, I'm always going to take, like I said for the main event, I always take the more skilled fighter. But that's not the case here because I do think Pereira is more skilled. But you have to look at how degraded he is, how much damage he's taken, where they're at this point in their career. Zach Reese has momentum. Pereira has none. A lot of attributes too. Again, the 4 inches of reach, 3 inches of height. It's going to show itself. So going to take Zachary Reese there by knockout. Chidi and Njokuani versus Carlos Leal. This is an interesting fight. This fight is almost reminiscent of Carlos Leal's versus Sadabusi, which some people thought Carlos Leal won. Now, Chidi is a bit older, and Leal could crack him. I don't really see Leal as a knockout artist, though. He did crack Morono, but Morono's chin is complete dust. I'd say Njokuani is a little chinny himself for sure, but not on the level of Morono. Carlos Leal, this guy is just a straight bruiser. The only way I could see him really beating Chidi is if he rushes him and tries to go for the grappling somewhat, but Leal is pretty much a pure striker. And Njokuani's age is obviously catching up to him, but that 4 inches of height, that 6 inches of reach, that is going to affect Leal. And we saw that Leal's durability is not so much there. Getting slept by Salikov is not a great look. Salikov is a talented striker, one of the most talented strikers that's ever graced the UFC, undoubtedly. But to get slept by him in a round in under a minute, it's embarrassing. It just shows a complete negligence of defense. And if guys can exploit that, they'll knock him out. I think I'm going to take Chidi by knockout. The more I think about it, Chidi's knees up the middle are ridiculous. We saw his fight against Barrio. If you are chinny, Chidi is chinny. So you could argue this is a glass cannon matchup. But if you don't have the reach to really get to Chidi, and you're kind of brainless in there like Leal is, you're going to get sniped. So I'm going to take Chidi by TKO here. It's a little risky. It might be the decision, if Chidi's just not hitting his spots all the way, but I don't really see Leal winning this one. So it's a hard fight to call because if Chidi shows up, looks every bit of 37, 38, and just, maybe takes some body shots and wilts, won't be the most surprised. But if we're talking about Chidi who shows up, athletic, bigger guy here, longer guy, sharpshooter, I like him to win. All right. I think his name's spelled Alibi, but I think it's Alibi Idiris. Don't quote me on that, though. Versus Ode Osbourne. So we have another guy here who, I don't like saying this a lot, but I think this guy's a complete fraud. Idiris getting ragdolled by Joseph Morales like that. I've seen Joseph Morales fight many times in the UFC. They gave him a second chance on The Ultimate Fighter. The way he just ragdolled Alibi, hurt him, subbed him, oh my God, just terrible, terrible, terrible look. And yeah, I think Ode, man, he's a southpaw. He's tricky. 5 inches of reach here, an inch of height. I mean, when you can use these intangibles, they're effective. And, you know, Alibi's probably going to try to wrestle. He looked terrible against Reynaldo, I believe that's his name, or the Mexican fighter on UFC Noche. Forgive me if I'm forgetting his name. And that was probably one of the worst looks because that guy is a very subpar grappler and was able to get Ode down and keep him down. But I don't know. Something's just telling me that Alibi is just a little too green here. And if he does win, it'll be that. It'll be a grappling decision. If Alibi wins, it'll be a grappling decision all the way, and that's really it, and that's how I see Ode winning. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I think that Ode is going to keep the range. I think he's going to light Alibi up, and, you know, it's going to be a close one, though. It might be a split if Alibi does have some takedowns and win some minutes and whatnot. I'm gonna take a risk on Ode here. You know he's gonna be the underdog, right? He's gonna get disrespected here. So I don't trust Ode's chin, but I don't trust Idiris to get close to his chin. So yeah, we'll take him there. And then we have Coria, versus Louis Gurule, something like that. So Gurule was like this hyped wrestler, supposedly. I've seen none of that. You know, speak of the devil, when he fought Osbourne, he couldn't even wrestle him. And I was just talking about how bad Osbourne is on the ground. Coria is a bit aggressive here, and this is a worrisome spot because I think Coria is a little over aggressive, but he's extremely violent in there. And the thing that really gets to me is just his size advantages. I don't think Gurule's going to do well. He's going to try and clinch. He's going to try to wrestle, but I haven't been impressed enough with his grappling to be like, okay, I think Gurule can get on the inside, maybe get him down. Coria's just explosive. He's going to have 3 inches of height, 3 inches of reach, and he uses them well. You know, he does like to fight on the inside. He's a little bit hittable, but the guy hits hard for flyweight. I don't know if he'll put Gurule away, but damage is the main thing they judge on, and I think he's going to put a lot of damage on Gurule. But this could be one of those things where Gurule's had enough UFC fights to be like, look, I need to win this one. I need to use my wrestling and floor this guy, because I do think Korea's reckless enough to lose. So we're going to find out. I'm going to go with Coria, but it's not like a confident play at all. Not a lot of these are confident plays, but it just feels right, especially with his size advantages here. I think he's going to be hard to control. So let's go for that. All right, Nora Cornolle versus Joselyne Edwards. This is a rematch, an interesting rematch from a few years back. Cornolle is 6 years the elder of Edwards, which is interesting. She doesn't really look 36 to me, but she is. 3-inch reach disadvantage. So Edwards basically has her covered everywhere. Edwards has been evolving quickly as well and just looked better than ever. I thought the robbery, I should open it up and say, they fought once. It was a horrible robbery. Truly one of the worst robberies you could imagine. I took Cornolle in that fight as a flyer, and I was like, I just got saved, you know? So I think they're giving this rematch because they're probably similarly in the rankings. Edwards, you know, she's a good fighter. She's evolved into an extremely formidable fighter who I like watching now. I mean, her knockout over Cachoeira was solid, and she's just getting better, man. Even the Eileen Perez performance, she fought hard to stop those takedowns, and Perez is an absolute savage in there with the takedowns, the wrestling. So don't really see Cornolle having much for Edwards, especially with the being 6 years older than her, being 36 now, having the 3-inch reach disadvantage. Edwards has only gained more confidence on the feet. So I like Joselyne there. All right, excuse the Tapology stats here. They didn't quite have them up on ESPN Fight Center because there were some rearrangements with the fight. Rowe is taking this fight on short notice. He's fighting Lebosnoyani. Lebosnoyani is an interesting fighter. I think that on the Contender Series, they gave him kind of a cupcake matchup. He's obviously just a good striker, though, and he paces himself well. Phil Rowe's very well-rounded, but I have not been impressed with him lately. I mean, he's been on the losing end of so many fights lately. He was getting dominated by Lusa and came back in that one. I think Lebosnoyani is a tough matchup for Rowe because he's a big guy, and he's also going to take his time in there. Rowe's already 35 years old. He's 6'3", but he's going to be the much bigger guy against most everyone. Does he use his reach? Well, to an extent. He just doesn't really hit very hard. So if Rowe uses that veteran experience and really goes grapple heavy, he could win it. But you can tell a lot of these Contender Series guys, they're pushing. And they're also pushing these kind of journeyman types out of the UFC. So I'm going to go with Lebosnoyani. A lot of the metrics favor Rowe, but it's just a momentum thing. And Lebosnoyani is a hungry guy, real knockout power. And, Rowe can cause problems, though, with his size, his grappling ability. So I don't know if Lebosnoyani is going to sleep him, but I feel like he's going to control the pace, control the range. Even though he's got 8-inch reach disadvantage, Rowe is just way too big for the division and doesn't quite use it that well on the feet, whereas Lebosnoyani is a sniper. So I'm gonna rock with him there. Let's do it. Ramiz Brahimaj versus Punahele Soriano. I was like, why is his name escaping me? Brahimaj had a nice little win, over Vanderford and whatnot. But Vanderford is just like, these guys are so middling. It's like you can't really tell anything by looking at their record. They win one, they lose one, they win one, they lose one. If we're looking at matchup for matchup, Punahele is just on an incredible tear right now. They're the same age. Punahele's got 1 inch of height, half an inch of reach. Don't know if that'll matter. I mean, Brahimaj's main thing is his submissions. He's trying to use that black belt, get it grounded, get your neck, something. Punahele has no neck. He's a better wrestler, much more dangerous striker. But Brahimaj is tough, He knocked out Mickey Gall, but that was a dogfight. He doesn't want to get into one of those with Punahele or he'll get knocked out. But I do think Brahimaj is actually tough enough to maybe make it to decision, but Punahele's probably going to incorporate a lot of his takedowns. I feel like Brahimaj's not going to stop them very well. But Punah also has, he can just use negative fight IQ in there sometimes. But for the most part, I think he gets it done. At welterweight, he's been a different beast, and he's got a lot of power. The Medic knockout was fantastic. So who knows? Punah by KO or decision is solid, and that's where I stand. All right, and then Yadier Del Valle versus Jordan Leavitt. I didn't want to lock Del Valle in, but I mean, I'm sure everyone watching this video is going to be on Del Valle. Guy is undefeated. Guy is incredible. The Bulgarian win obviously has some asterisks around it, but it don't matter. He was going to give Bulgarian some problems regardless of whether or not that guy threw it or not. Del Valle is just an extremely talented submission artist, and his striking is just worlds apart from Leavitt's. He's a growing product himself, a little green in some areas, but he's the younger man by a year. Leavitt will have a couple inches of reach, and I do think Leavitt does give everybody problems with his jiu-jitsu early on. Might get Yadier down a few times, but Del Valle has just got an endless gas tank. He's going to put the pressure on Leavitt eventually and maybe even stop him. Now, this is a southpaw versus southpaw matchup, so things could get weird. Yadier Del Valle's kicks might not be as effective as they were in the past, but I do think Del Valle is going to show us some new things here as he is a growing product, and Leavitt is kind of a completed product. We know what he offers. The Hollowbow win was great. And Yadier can't underestimate Leavitt's offensive grappling, because if he starts getting takedowns and Del Valle gets comfortable off his back, that won't be the greatest thing. But I can see reversals from Del Valle. Del Valle just seems, it says they're the same height and Leavitt has more reach. I just feel like Del Valle uses it better, though. You know what I mean? So he's also extremely accurate. They're both extremely accurate, but Leavitt, it just doesn't throw very much, whereas Yadier does throw a lot. And so, yeah, Del Valle is probably going to catch him at some point, or, just embarrass him on the feet and then maybe sub him. I mean, anybody can get subbed if they're hurt. And, and then the next fight is Carly Judas versus Juliana Miller. I made a 1-minute prediction for that. So go check that out if you're interested. I usually make the 1-minute prediction. Not usually. I do make the 1-minute predictions for fighters that I lock in. So yeah, go check that out. I appreciate the support. Appreciate you guys watching. If you guys want to subscribe to me, I'm making predictions every week. You can count on that. So had a pretty solid UFC 325. This is a great card, and wish you luck.